Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are still in a winter wonderland. It is beautiful and white outside, and so I'm going live again because I don't have to be at work today, but I'm thinking about work. Not really work because it's not work to me, but I'm thinking about stuff. I'm thinking about stuff. So, anyways, good morning. I wanted to jump on here today and I want to talk about the kids. I want to talk about what are your kids doing? Yes, I know that a kid is a baby goat, but that's what we call our children, our young ones. So I want to know what your children are doing. And not only that, not only do I just want to talk about what they're doing, but I want to talk a little bit about what you can be doing with them. And so the purpose of me going live today is just to give a few resources, to give a few resources to help you out when you are. As you parents say, stuck in the house. When you are stuck in the house with your kids, we've got this extended period of time. I don't have a clue as to how long we're going to be out. I heard that Madison City Schools gave the notice that said until further notice they would be out. And I think that's absolutely amazing and wise. But again, I don't know. Y'all forgive me. I'm tagging a few parents because I want to make sure that they are aware that I'm doing this today, not not like I usually do. I usually go live and I'm usually praying, and who knows, it may even get there, but that's not the purpose of this particular live today. This particular live is to just talk about the kiddos. So I'm going to give you guys a few moments, and even if you don't chime in on the live, I really want to see you in the replay. Making sure that we're taking care of these kids. So, here's some things that, and feel free to tag anybody that has young children. And so, when I'm going to talk to you about students from kindergarten all the way up to fifth grade. Oh, that's what I forgot. From kindergarten all the way up to fifth grade. And so, if you have a student that is in anywhere in North Alabama or in Tennessee, uh, or in Louisiana, I think, or I don't know if parts of Georgia, then you may be in a system where uh, the school systems are closed. And so we have all of this time where we're at home with the kids. So I want to talk about this, like when the kids are at home, and not just when there's weather events, but also um, on the weekends, on scheduled holidays off, and after school is over. What are you doing with your kids? Now, some people say, well, whatever they get at school is what they get, and then that's enough. Let me tell you that it's not enough. There are things that you should be doing with your students, with your children, with your kids. Y'all forgive me today. We're gonna use the word kids, but there are things that you should be doing with your kids, um, even when they are not at school, because learning never stops. Learning never stops. And so it is highly important that you take what your child's teacher is doing and you implement it at home. And so what that means is your child is getting a well-rounded education. You want to make sure that the principles and things that your student is learning is they're able to apply it to their everyday life and not just look at reading or writing or math or something of that nature as an isolated incident. You don't want students you don't want kids to look at reading like, well, that's just something I do at school. Because a lot of kids think that. And why do they think that? They think that because that's the only time that they do it is when they're at school. Now, I tutor. And in tutoring, what I find after I assess students or after I've worked with them for a while, what I find is the problem is not the skill with your child not being able to read or not being able to blend, not being able to comprehend. That's usually not the basis of the problem. Usually, the problem is consistency, and we find that in our adult lives is consistency. Your children need consistent exposure to words, to reading, even math concepts. They need consistent exposure and consistent engagement with text, with reading, with math. I don't want to leave out any content area, but reading is my thing. But they need constant exposure to these concepts. So what they get at school, we're teaching them foundational skills at school, but we don't have enough time to have them engaged in everything that they need. So what that means is you can extend the learning environment at home. That does not mean that you have to sit at the kitchen table with pen and paper and books and things like that, though that may be good. That's not all that you have to do. For example, y'all trust me, I have some Uno cards. These Uno cards were easily at my disposal. If I look right here, I got a pack of mini Uno cards. Uno. My face 10 cards, even regular cards. I have a deck or two up here upstairs, and then I have a deck or two downstairs. So I keep cards. But here's the thing. Playing Uno with your kid, get all of the kids, get them involved in playing Uno. If you get them involved in just playing a game, it will spark learning. It can spark comprehension. It can spark strategy skills, thinking skills, especially strategy. But get them to read what's on the card. I don't have any. All right, your littles. You're teaching them to read. All right. What does this say? They may recognize it just by the picture, but let's look at the word. What does it say? Reading is everywhere. Oh my goodness. Reading is everywhere. All right. So we take the Uno cards and you want to teach them counting or numbers. We're talking about littles. You just want to teach them numbers. You don't have to just write it down on a piece of paper. Here we go. What number is this? 1. What number is this? 3. You can use what you have at home. You don't have to spend all kinds of money on some of these educational tools that are out there. They are great, and there are many, but there are things in your house I guarantee you have because you have kids. Uno, phase 10. I couldn't find my regular deck of cards that I cleaned my desk off, so I didn't have everything where, but a regular deck of cards, you can use those for reading and for math. Here's another resource that's good for you. Crayons. Come on. I know if you have children in kindergarten through 5th grade in your house, you have crayons. Well, what can you use crayons for other than just coloring? There's words on the crayon. And this one happens not to be just pink, but it is carnation pink. So again, I can use this as an opportunity just to look at letters, to look at words with my littles. All right, so let's talk about older students. Let's talk about 4th and 5th grade. Let's go back to Uno. Uno, phase 10, skip bow, sorry, connect 4. I don't know. What are some other games that the kids like? Whatever games they want. They're teaching them strategy skills. It's teaching them teamwork. It's teaching them thinking skills. Perseverance. Let's talk a little bit about perseverance with your 4th and 5th graders, even 3rd graders. They get a little bit tired of doing stuff like this because they're used to being on these games and they're used to flashy stuff. So get them off the games, get them off of electronics, and get them into things that they can manipulate with their hands, with conversation with you, or with other people in the house. And so if they're playing Uno, it's strategy all around. Now, let's make sure that we're going over the rules, and so that it doesn't become just an argument. But this also teach them problem solving skills. Now, problem solving skills go beyond just actual problems with people or whatever, but problems manipulating a game, problems manipulating numbers. Problem solving skills are very important in math. They need those skills for problem solving, but it's also to teach them to persevere. I'm giving you so many tools, and giving you a lot to think about, but again, my desire is that you understand that while your kids are out, please don't just lay around all day. Please don't just to get them out your hair, have them on the video games. Please don't do that, because there's consistency from school that is lost. There's consistency from learning that is lost, or that gets on the back burner, that that you don't want to be lost with your kids. Okay, because what happens is, once we go back to school, we've got to pick up the pace in what we've learned, because we've had some time that is lost. And so if your kids are not able to pick up, they could fall behind. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some books, because that's really, really important. So in my background, I've just got some books that I love. This is one that I recently came in contact with. I Am My Ancestors' Wildest Dream by Tanisha Moore, and illustrated by Paul Jr., Robert Paul Jr., who is an amazing illustrator. I started following him just recently, like within the last month. I'm like, and this is this has been published by Scholastic Publishing. So kudos to them. Listen, y'all, this book, I'm all about Black history, and teaching our students to celebrate and know their culture. This book is so amazing to me because it goes beyond what we usually teach our students in Black history, or the people that we teach them in Black history. This has I'll tell you who else in this book, and it amazes me. Yes, Martin Luther King is in here, Chadwick Boseman, Kobe Bryant, Tupac Shakur. Hey, because there were amazing things about Tupac. He was an influence in our culture. Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G. Ralph Ellison, and if you don't know who Ralph Waldo Ellison is, this book will teach you who he is, but you should know what he is. He was a musical composer. Muhammad Ali, Thurgood Marshall, that's one that we usually kind of talk about. Charles Richard Drew, who was a surgeon and researcher. He is known as the father of the blood bank. Did you know that? I didn't till I read this book. John Robert Lewis. Come on, Good Trouble. Who else is in here? Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle is in this book. And I love that Nipsey is celebrated for his knowledge and his wisdom and his influence in our culture. So let me make sure I'm not leaving anybody else out. Okay, those are the ones that are in this book. But isn't that amazing? So it's good to know about the Sojourner Truths and about Harriet Tubman. We need to know those. But what about those more people that are relevant to our kids today? Tupac Shakur, yeah, they can relate. Biggie Smalls, Nipsey, Muhammad Ali, John Lewis, yeah, these are more recent. And Chadwick Boseman, look at this. Look at the amazing illustration in this. So I don't want to read a book. I don't want to read a book. That's not what I'm on here for. But this is a recommend. I highly, highly recommend. As soon as I saw a friend post this, shout out to Barbara. I saw a friend post this, and I looked at it and I was like, "It's something about this book," and so I went immediately to Amazon and I ordered a book. I don't even remember how much it was. It doesn't matter. Support. Um, but I ordered it, and oh, and I love when you can take a jacket off. I love to use the jackets to hang on the wall. Like I use it to decorate my classroom, or I could have just put it right there because it's just the jacket. But the book is still exactly what the jacket is. There's some books out there where the jacket is just the cover, and then you don't have anything covered over here. Anyways, that's not what I'm here to talk about. But this is amazing. Whether you are a teacher of any culture, whatever ethnicity you are, you teach diverse students, and this is a book that you need to have in your classroom. But parents, you need to have this in your home. I don't know if there is a YouTube read aloud for this, but if it is, you can have your fingertips at it today. I might. No, that's for another day. But yeah. So this is one that I recommend. Here's another one that I recommend that you read to your. Could take the jacket off of this one too. Y'all love books. Maybe I should have been a librarian. No. Speaking of librarians, well, I'll speak of that. Change things. So this is now. That's the only thing about jackets. They're not as sturdy as an actual book. Is that a bad thing? We get over that. So this is Amanda Gorman's book, and I may have already talked about this before or given this as a recommend. I'm watching people slide on this ice outside, but beautifully illustrated. I'm so serious about books with beautiful illustrations. But Amanda Gorman, who is an American poet, who was able to speak at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. Young lady, beautiful soul, beautiful soul. So this was her debut book. She says, I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. Yeah, Amanda Gorman. She has some other books out, but this is one that I just happen to have with me. And this book is considered a children's anthem. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. And there we have it, Dr. Martin Luther King right there. No, I'm not going to read the entire book. But look at this. There is hope where my change sings. So what are we teaching our children? So, all right. So we're talking about being out for school. And this is just, I wanted to give those two recommends. Now, my dog book up there, that's an encyclopedia. And one of my parents, when I was in teaching third grade, one of the parents of the students gifted me with this. We had a book fair, and teachers are able to put on a wish list, and I definitely put that on. I didn't think I was going to get it because it was one of the more expensive books. But yeah, it's an encyclopedia, and it's about dogs. I like encyclopedias. Yes, I'm a nerd. And then I love dogs. So woo, all together. My kids loved this book, but of course I keep it with me. But encyclopedias, I had that up there. And these books here to say, you might have different types of books and things around your house that you can just sit down and read with your kids and then ask them questions about it. So that was the next thing that I wanted to talk about is asking your students, your kids, questions about what they read. That's important. When you are reading with your kids, there are certain types of questions that you want to ask. And then there are certain types of questions that you just want to try to stay away from as much as possible. Let me give you an example of a question that you do not want to overutilize. And that's, what's the book about? What did you read? Okay, they hear that all the time. They're gonna just spit out a few facts. They're gonna spit out what comes up in their quick short term memory, maybe. Especially if you have a struggling reader, they may do that. So we want to ask them questions that are going to spark creativity, questions that are going to spark comprehension, and then questions that are going to spark further inquiry to make them think about the text or even beyond the text. We want to make what we're called self text to self connections, or even text to world connections, and not just what this book is, and even maybe relate to another book. So here's some examples of some questions you could ask the student or your child. You can say, how can you relate to this book? Or is there someone in this book that you relate to? Ah, so that makes them think. Second, third, fourth, fifth graders, definitely you want to ask those questions. Kindergarten to first grade, guide them a little bit more. Maybe if they don't understand the word relate, and even the second through fifth, if they don't teach them, it's always a learning opportunity. But maybe if I'm looking at I Am My Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, you can look at, you can ask your kindergartner, your first grader, who is somebody in this book that you are like? Okay. And you've got to help them with that because they may only hear that you like. No, 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 no. I'm talking about who you are like. Because again, we're building um, text to self connections, and getting to think and engage with the text a little bit more. But who are you like in this book? So in this book, let's see. So when he was talking about here, it says, or maybe I can do it all, play sports and still save lives, like Dr. Charles Drew. So Dr. Charles Drew was a doctor that he not only saved lives, but they said he could do it all. He played sports too, and has a picture of him playing sports. Your child, your son or your daughter may play sports, and you're like, oh, I'm like Charles Drew. I I play sports too, or I play soccer, I play this. I'm like him. Or they may even relate it to somebody and say, I'm like them because my hair is like theirs, my skin color is like theirs. Or get to thinking about, okay, here's Ralph Ellison, who was an author and all of that. Well, I'm like him because I like books or I like writing. Now, what is this right here? This is something that's a good conversation starter, because if your kid is looking at it, they may say, what is that? Because think about it, our generation of babies, they don't know what a typewriter is. That's a good way to have them engaged with the text. You're having them thinking of, oh, it's so much that I could be saying to you guys. But you're having them think about this book. You're having them think about what they see in it, or whatever book you decide. Do I have this? It's another book that I recommend. I do have it. Um, Last Stop on Market Street. I really like this book. Y'all forgive me for writing it. I write it out. See, I wrote the level and I write my name in it. But Last Stop on Market Street, by Matt Della Pena. So you can read that CJ in this book. Little kids can relate to CJ so much. CJ and his grandmother. Um, Ask questions about how can you relate to characters in the story. Who were the characters in the story? All right. So let's say you decided to take an encyclopedia, or you read an informational text. And what an informational text is it gives facts, and it is nonfiction. It's not a story, but it's an informational. And I am so sorry I didn't bring it, or bring one that's an example. But if you are reading something that is true, or nonfiction, you can ask your kid questions like, tell me three facts that you learned from us reading this book, or looking through this magazine, this encyclopedia, or looking through a magazine. I love magazines. or looking through this news, whatever. Tell me three things that you learned. Now, when you ask a kid about when you say things like um, tell me three things that you learned or three things that you read, they should not take the book and go back. All right. Don't let them go back and tell you, because you want to encourage them. Now, you might have to guide them the first time or two, but you want to encourage them to um, remember and pay attention while they're reading. You want to know what kind of things grab them while they're reading. Tell me something that was exciting. Tell me something that was interesting. Tell me something that you didn't know. So instead of using the verbiage, tell me three facts, just say, tell me three things, or tell me one thing that you did not know that you read in the book, or tell me something that surprised you. Tell me something that that was interesting to you. Now, after you do that, then you may want to ask them, all right, of those things that you said, all right, you told me that it. Let me just take one. Let's just have a real. This book is heavy. Let's have a real example. So, what a pretty dog. Let me find one that I don't know anything about, which is a lot. Oh, goodness. Okay, so here's an example. Here's something I could do. So in this book, they have the books in classes, right? So here's one class. It's sight hounds. Ooh, that's a word that we need. We need to teach them sight. IGHT is a skill that the kids need to know. Ite. How do they get? That's a diagram. Anyways, so in reading this, I know that there are certain dogs that are in classes, and some of them are sight hounds. And so when we're reading, let's look at this a little bit. Canine speed merchants, the sight hounds, or gaze hounds, as some are called, are hunting dogs that locate and follow their prey primarily by using their keen eyesight. Streamlined, lightly framed, but powerful, a sight hound in pursuit of quarry moves rapidly and turns with great flexibility. Many dogs in this group were bred to hunt specific prey. All right. So some things that, oh goodness. So an Italian Greyhound is a sight hound. Okay. A Whippet is is a sight hound. And so if I were asked, well, tell me three things that I learned or that stood out to me, from my run. One, I did not know that a Whippet, and I didn't, so I'm telling you this real time. I did not know that a Whippet was a hound. Okay, so I didn't know it was a hound, and I definitely didn't know that it was a sight hound. I didn't know that it had keen eyesight. All right, because it is a sight hound, and I also didn't know that their bodies are very lightweight. Okay, so then after I have three facts, then you could ask questions like, and this may be difficult with what I just read, but if we were reading, here we are in I Am My Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, and we're learning about Nipsey, we're learning about Tupac, we're learning about Biggie, we're learning about Drew, we're learning about Bozeman, then you could ask your child, what is something that you learned? So you learned this. How can you use that to make a difference in your community? How can you use that to learn something else? Or what can you do with that information? What you want to know is, how is that relevant? Learning that, how is it relevant to the child's life? What does it mean to you? So you need to be asking your kids. Y'all pray I can get this up here because this book is heavy. You need to be asking your kids questions about what they read that makes them think and that makes them apply what they've read to their lives. It makes it relevant. When they read and when things are relevant to their lives, they're more inclined to have more questions and to want to know more. You can play vocabulary. Y'all, it's so much that you can do. It's so much that you can do. But for sake's time, because I could keep on, I could keep on, I could keep on. But for sake's time, what I want you to gain from this today is make sure that while you guys are out of school, that you are reading with your kids. Please read with your kids. Please have your kids read something. If you don't know what to read, and I'm going to put this up. Well, no, I'm not. That'll take too long. Go to youtube.com. Go to YouTube. You know, I said that. Go to YouTube and you can type in Rooted in Reading, Read Alouds. Rooted in Reading, Read Alouds. Now, what is that? Rooted in Reading, Read Alouds is first of all, Rooted in Reading is a resource that has absolutely amazing reading resources to teach reading, grammar, language, all of that. It's a curriculum resource. But with it, it has mentor text. And those mentor texts are absolutely amazing. So if you are looking for relevant and award-winning books for your students, for your kids at home, go to Rooted in Reading, Read Alouds on YouTube. You can filter it by grade level, first, second, third grade. Filtering it by grade level is good, and then pick any of those books. Now, let me go ahead and give you a heads up. You need to vet the read aloud before you actually do it with your kid. And what do I mean by that? I have seen plenty on there where people are on there reading and they sound like they need the reading instruction themselves. Their prosody is off, their tone is off, no enthusiasm, and you don't want that kind of thing for your kid when you're reading with them. Read with your kid. Don't just give them advice and say, hey, bring this book up. No, sit down with them. The recommended time of reading up to third grade. I'm going to say up to third grade, minimum 20 minutes a day. Now, that's first through third. Kindergarten, 20 minutes is a bit much. 10 minutes will get you where you need to go. No, you want to work your way up to 20 minutes per day. Above that, add on 10 minutes for each grade level. So if you're sitting down with your kids, just carve out 20 minutes of reading time for your kid. Carve out 20 minutes where you can sit down, you have the read aloud going, and then you can ask those questions that I was telling you about. You can ask them, who did they relate to in the story, and why did you relate to them? The level of questioning that you ask your kid is so important. We've got to get away from the questions, well, what did you like about the story? Yes, that's a good question, but we want to go deeper, because this is what's happening. Your kids are going to school and they're being tested on text, and they're being tested on books and literature and passages of things, and they are asked these deeper level questions. And if your baby is not used to thinking on their own, and you're only giving them closed-ended questions where it's a yes or no, or it was blue, it was red, they went to the store. If they're only used to those, what we call DOK, depth of knowledge, DOK level 1, level 2 questions, they're not going to excel on any of these reading comprehension tests that they are required to do. All right, so listen, the time is well spent, 30 something minutes. I could go on and on about text and engaging with text, but I want you to send me your questions. And I think I made a mistake and only went live on YouTube. Maybe not, but send me your questions. Send me your inquiries about what else you can do with your kids while we're out, because I honestly don't know when we're going back to school, especially if you're in Madison City. They just said whatever, but we're looking at the weather. We don't know. But again, this is not just about the weather. This is right now. This is what can you do with your kids on the weekend? What can you do when school is out? What can you do on scheduled holidays and time out? Because you need to be engaged with the text with your kid, with text all the time. Quality reading, come on. And I'll post some other resources on where you can go if you don't have the money or the, like right now, we can't get to the library, but there are library resources, free library resources where you could go and you can get books and read alouds, or even if it's not a read aloud. And let me clarify. But never mind. Even if it's not a read aloud, just something your kid can read. There's free resources out there, and I'll make sure that I get some resources to you. Thank you so much for your time. Again, if you have any questions, inbox me. Facebook, YouTube. I don't think you can send me questions on YouTube, but you can uh, send me your questions, or send me your inquiries. You can always reach me. My website is on there. You can always reach me on my website. So, jenniferspeech.org. All right. So that's it. 36 minutes we're in. And I may do this again. I feel inclined to do this again, just so you can get some resources for you and your children. Happy reading, and y'all stay safe out there. Bye-bye.